Welcome, everyone, to the Jay Saki Show. I am your host, Jay Saki, Doctor of Cinema. I discuss movies, and hopefully I might have something relevant to say that will change your view on art and cinema. And I say, hopefully, because I make no promises. I'm joined tonight by Master Elias. He's a graduate of St. Mary's College of Maryland, bachelor's in history and English, and he also studied literary history at Oxford. And he might have something relevant to say that will also change your views on art and cinema. Hey Elias, how you doing tonight?
Good evening, Master Sake. I'm alright. Join the Christmastide, or Advent specifically.
Great to have you here. Okay, so about 10 days back, you went out and saw Wicked.
I sure did.
And you told me that you liked it.
Yes, I was a little surprised myself. I was not expecting to like it. I thought it was quite good.
Yeah, and once I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll check it out also. So I did. And now we're going to talk about it.
Yes, much to discuss.
And we'll try to discuss a bunch first and get into spoilers later. So if people want to hear our initial thoughts, then tune out once we get to spoilers. So your initial thoughts are, it was good.
I thought it was a very solidly done film, yeah. I thought the story worked quite well with the music and just the characters were decent. Set design was great. I thought it through very well.
So then I saw the movie, and this was interesting. So, like a few minutes into it, it had something, like I'm, how do I say this? There are things in movies that will, no matter what you do, there are ways to completely make me hate your film, okay? And it's almost impossible to win me back over once you do certain things. So very shortly into the film, it made me hate it, and I was like, okay, great movie. I'm not going to like you now, but I'll just watch you and get what I can out of you. And I was thinking, whenever we do this review, it was just going to be you liking the movie and me just being a jerk and tearing it apart and being cynical. But as I watched the movie started to kind of win me over, because there'd be like a funny joke, and I'd be like, okay, it was funny. And then there'd be like a cool musical number, and it's like, yeah, that was kind of a cool number there, I'm not gonna lie. And then by the time it was over, I was really surprised with how much I enjoyed it. And this movie, even though I still have a ton of criticisms, it must have been doing something right for me to have walked out of the theater feeling as refreshed as I did.
So I think I can cast some light on why the story worked for the audience, but you might be able to bring us up to speed on why you felt that way after you left the theater, like the movie magic.
Well,
is your forte, right?
Let's rewind a little bit. What's your familiarity with Wicked? Like before the movie even came out, there was like a stage musical and there was a book, and I think you're more informed about that than I was.
I mean, slightly above average, yeah.
I'll just really quickly say, I had the most fleeting knowledge of the stage show. I just knew it was a stage show, something about like a retelling or something. I think I got the impression that girls really liked it. That was about it, though. I really knew basically nothing. Once I saw the trailers for the movie, I got a little bit more of an idea of what it was going to be about, but that's me. So what's your prior knowledge background in Wicked?
Well, I think we're both theater kids to some extent. Back when I was in middle school, um, our music director decided it would be a fantastic idea to blend together The Wizard of Oz, like the 1939 movie musical, all those numbers, and Wicked together into a single performance, and it was a train wreck. I got no indication of what the plot of Wicked was about from performing in that, but I did. That was my familiarity with the music. I mean, I heard a few of the other songs over the years. I liked it, but I didn't know much about it from the musical or how the musical was set itself apart. I did end up reading the book, however, in college. I hated it.
Ooh.
I severely disliked the book. It's just the worst, purposely trying to be edgy and violent and grungy. It's like the peak '90s grunge retelling of a story. It's really just trying to like destroy the original Wizard of Oz book and the 1939 movie completely. Just burn it all down.
So that's
Which I don't actually like the original book that much either, for various reasons I won't get into here.
well,
Or at least not yet. But
that's interesting because you said the words '90s grunge, and I really have no idea what that means. Like, have you read popular '90s literature or something? Because I don't think I have.
I mean it in the sense that actually, I mean, Wicked, the book, it was more aimed, I think, at guys than girls. It's very much part of that cultural trend where, everything was dark and brooding. Like, I mean, think of, the 2000s Batman movie.
Okay, was
Late 2000s Batman movie. Like that sort of retelling with a darker lens. That was the idea of Wicked the book.
okay.
And weirdly, I think it was written by a children's author who decided to totally shift gears.
Okay, but did you see the stage show at all? Your only
No,
relation was
nope.
okay.
I've never seen the actual stage show. I've listened to the music CD from the stage show with all the songs at various points, but besides the truncated version I acted in and sang in, I have never actually seen it up until the movie. I assume the movie is pretty faithful, though.
Yeah, well, didn't you say that that you thought the movie fixed things that you didn't like about the book?
Yes. Yeah, and that's a little bit to go into, but basically, I thought I mean, I can't speak for the stage show necessarily. The movie might be pretty different, but it toned down all of the elements that I thought were really over the top and unnecessary in the book, and actually brought it down to earth in a way. Compared to the book was just absurdly violent, and I couldn't take it seriously.
Okay, interesting.
I mean, the movie's only like the first half of the book too.
I keep imagining it's like the Game of Thrones of Wizard of Oz books.
Basically, that's exactly the idea. Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to think about what we can talk about with the movie without spoiling things. Like, in general, how did you like the musical numbers?
I thought the musical numbers were great. It was really well cast for the singing voices. Choreography was really good. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised by how well the just the songs and the singers worked. It was really well designed.
Okay, so I'll be honest, there's only two numbers I actually remember. I mean, everything sounded... I remember them singing all throughout the movie, but the two numbers that actually, like, stuck out to me was the one where, like, the Prince character sings about blowing off school.
Yes.
That one I really liked. That
Dancing
was
Through Life.
that was the
It's
one
very
that
good.
was like, oh, come on, you like this musical number, didn't you, Joe? I'm like, yeah, I kind of did.
It's also just the amazing library set design is such a great showpiece for it. I think that's what helped make it really memorable.
Yeah, I noticed they were putting a lot of effort into this movie.
Oh,
Like
they put it.
a
Yeah,
lot.
I was really impressed. I mean, you think that nowadays that the easiest thing you can say about a movie is that it looked good, but this actually looked good. Like they put a lot of love into the world, which is one of the main things I hated about the book. Is the author didn't seem like he loved the world. It seemed like he was just trying to tear it down for fun. Maybe that wasn't his intent, but that's what I took away from it. That's not what I took away from this movie at all. Even though it is still a, recontextualizing, a retelling that's intends to be subversive. I don't think it actually succeeds, but we'll get into that probably later.
Yeah, just like I said, I turned on the movie very early on, and I was ready to hate it, but it was putting all kinds of effort into everything. There's so many small moments of nuance, and so many small moments where I don't know, like jokes and things that really landed. I'm like, you're putting a lot. You're bringing your A game movie, and you're making it hard for me to not like you.
Yes. I expected from the trailers, which I did get the ick from. I expected not to like it, but I think they fleshed out the characters pretty realistically. Even though, I mean, they're both of the main characters, Elphaba and Galinda, are both kind of caricatures. It still works. They still work as real people, I think.
Oh, well,
In a maybe you disagree totally, which is fine.
I have some thoughts on character writing. But let's see. Okay, so there's the blowing off school musical number, and then the final one, Defying Gravity.
Yes.
And this is where things started to click for me, because I heard people mention Wicked in conjunction with Disney's Frozen. And
That's an interesting connection. I
because
hadn't really
of
thought of that.
I guess for the stage show, what's her name? Indina Denzel or whatever
I don't know.
played the witch, and she plays Elsa in Frozen. And Frozen, they sing the Let It Go song. And
I thought you just meant in the basic storytelling arc. There's also a lot in common.
just in Wicked, they have the song Defying Gravity. And it's like, oh, it's essentially the very first version of Let It Go.
Yeah, it's the same sentiment. That's very interesting.
So that whole last bit was, I thought, very impactful and very moving, and I really got into the spirit of the film in that last moment. And I'm like, oh, I'm down for part 2.
Yeah. Even though you realize after the fact, oh well, I guess that's kind of a spoiler.
Well,
I mean, it's not really a spoiler. It's just something that amused me. Is Elphaba's cape gradually getting longer and longer as the musical number goes on?
I don't know why it did get longer and longer. It's a thing.
I don't know.
Okay.
It was probably for dramatic effect. It's not really a spoiler, but an amusing detail, I think. And I mean, a detail that wasn't intended to be amusing, but they put it in nonetheless, which shows they cared.
Okay, I guess we'll try to get into spoilers, but before we do,
There's your first spoiler, throwing you a bone.
yeah,
The cape gets longer, people.
do you recommend the movie? Just
I would say in general, yeah, I think obviously it's the end of the year. I don't think this has been a great year for movies.
anyways, for me, I'm trying to think if I can say if it's actually like a good movie, because okay, there's so much for me to criticize, but it did give me like a really good feeling exiting the theater. So I'm like, it's hard to say.
I would see it. I think I would see it again.
I would say if you're starved for good films right now, then yes, go see it. You will have a great time.
Yeah, which if you have to see a modern movie in theaters, your pickings are pretty slim.
But it's not a family film. It's an adult film. Don't bring the kids. And you kind of have to go into it like you're going into a Deadpool movie. You just kind of have to like sell your soul a bit to the movie.
I've I've not seen a Deadpool movie, so
I haven't either.
I don't know
but
what that means.
I haven't either, but I'm just saying it's like when you go see a movie that you know is bad for you, but you go see it anyways just because you're bored. You know, it's like that's my mentality, and I'll explain and I'll say why.
I don't necessarily agree with that,
Don't
but
bring the kids.
I understand what you mean. Yeah, it's definitely an adult film.
Okay, so spoilers.
I think it is PG-13, right?
No, it's PG.
Really? Interesting.
Okay, so
yeah.
May I start with the spoilers?
Sure. What's the first spoiler
well,
you want to drop?
Okay, I guess we should talk about what the story's about.
Oh yeah, for people who haven't seen the film or
so not spoilers.
They don't have any familiarity with it.
But basically, I guess I would say it starts off with
we should prefix it. It's a prequel to The Wizard of Oz.
Yes, but it starts off at the end of Wizard of Oz, like, oh, the Wicked Witch is dead, and it's like, yay! But Glinda, didn't you know her? Well, yes, I did, everyone. And then it does a flashback, and then it's all about how Glinda and the Wicked Witch of the West were roommates in college.
Yes.
And Elphaba.
You can tell the kind of person who wrote this story.
And Elphaba had Elphaba is the name of the Wicked Witch of the West. I don't even know if did they drop that name in the Wizard of Oz movie?
No, it's I looked this up. Apparently, it's a what's the word?
Made up.
I mean, it's a made up name based on L. Frank Baum's initials.
Oh, okay.
LFB, Elphaba. So it does have some grounding, if you can call it that. But anyway, yeah, Elphaba. I keep forgetting her name.
Okay, so Elphaba had a very abusive childhood. Like, I guess she was born with green skin for reasons, and her parents were mortified by her, so they made her mother drink a potion so that their next child would not be born with green skin, but that made their next daughter born in a with a paraplegic or something.
In a fantasy wheelchair.
And the father blamed Elphaba for all this. Yeah, and then Elphaba goes to college, and she and Glinda are studying under a sorceress, and they may or may not go see The Wizard of Oz should they get good enough. That's the crash course of the story.
Yeah, basically.
And it's about them butting heads as roommates.
That is the main driver of the plot, yeah. There's a lot going on in the background, but that's basically it. I would add, however, an important detail that you omitted is that Elphaba is illegitimate. And that's key, I think, to understanding who she is as a character archetype.
Right.
But we'll get more on that later.
That's another reason to not bring the kids. Mommy, Daddy, what's an illegitimate child?
It starts with a philandering scene.
Yeah, well, kids wouldn't get what was going on, honestly.
No, of course not.
What was it?
They would just see two people dancing.
Yep. That's all they would see, just two people dancing. Actually, something else went through my head just now. We are getting way too far ahead of ourselves. There was something else that was relevant to mention in all this. What was it? Something very obvious. Give me a moment. Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's the animal rights.
People have pointed out that this is a very much like a girls' movie. And that's like to its credit because the girl movie genre has like pretty much vanished. You don't get like major girl pandering films.
You know, I suppose you're right. It seems like that shouldn't be true, but what you get is masculine coded films with female protagonists. Yeah, that's not the same thing at all. Yeah.
This was brought up with the Barbie movie, which even if you criticize that movie for having nefarious messaging, people said like, hey, it's the first time in a long time you had like a girls movie, and that's why that probably grossed $1 billion.
Yeah, I'd say as a feminine coded film, it is very substantial.
So yeah, it's kind of like
It
interesting.
feels like a female perspective, which is good.
So yeah, bring back the
actually.
girls movie.
Yeah, for real.
Okay, so now I guess we'll really get into spoilers, or get into more
Yes.
spoilery territory.
Start digging a little deeper.
Okay, so
I mean, we can talk about the ending, of course. You kind of skipped over that,
yeah,
but basically, Elphaba and Galinda go to the Emerald City.
well, no,
They-
but I think we'll get.
You didn't want to summarize the whole plot? All right.
We're not summarizing the whole. We gave people the premise.
It's your
of the
show.
plot, okay,
It's your show. All right.
that's yeah. First time doing this. Maybe next time we'll have a system. But okay, so I wanted to talk about.
Flow. It's all right.
I wanted to talk about the thing I hated the most, which is very shortly after you get into the movie. They go to.
I guess I'll talk about what I hated the most next. We'll share our hates.
Okay, well they
Our
get to.
10-minute hate.
They go to Shiz University, and it's gender fluid. The guys and gals there are interchangeably wearing pants and skirts, and like a third of them have like half pants, half skirts.
Oh, weird. I didn't notice that at all.
It was so patently obvious. Like, you didn't notice the half skirts, half pants?
No.
I kid you not. It was
Oh
just.
man. Oh, now I need to
so-
rewatch it for that's such a weird detail.
You did notice the guys in the dresses everywhere, right?
No.
How did you not notice that?
I don't know. That's
That's-
really interesting. Yeah, I didn't notice that at all. I just saw the frippy uniforms, the preppy uniforms.
There's school uniforms. I'm not kidding. Like, okay, I don't know.
I mean, I'm not surprised in the least. I totally believe that's the thing they did.
And it wasn't the
I didn't notice at all.
and it wasn't like, oh, one guy back there with a dress or something like that. It was
Sure.
half the guys had dresses, half the women had pants, and then there was literally like half skirt, half pants wearing students.
They just can't,
And I couldn't
can't help
understand
asserting
how.
their.
Okay, so there's a thing where like a right-wing movie critic might ignore the gay kiss or something because he doesn't want to look stodgy. But you really have to bite your tongue on this because I'm like, this is just, it's like a huge plot element, the gender fluid school.
Is it though?
Yes, it's so, it sticks out. I don't know how you're not seeing this.
Yeah, I'm also kind of surprised for sure.
Okay, well, the point is, take my word for it, audience. It's
Doesn't really factor into the plot though.
Okay, here's
They're
the
all
thing.
wearing pretty gay clothes.
If you paused the movie, okay, if we were watching, people compared Shiz University with Hogwarts. If we put on a Harry Potter film, and if you paused any moment with a whole bunch of students, you could pick out the girl students and the boy students. The boys had pants and had short hair. The girls had skirts and had long hair. If you paused in any moment with the students at this school, and if I asked you, Elias, $1 million if you can tell me if that's a guy or a girl in the background, you would not be able to do it. Because I couldn't do that. Because I was playing this game with myself. Like, if I pause this, can I tell if those are guys or girls back there? You can't.
Yep, yeah.
It's the
this
whole
is
blur-
Hogwarts, but gay.
This is the thing, like somebody once said that there's a big thing with blurring the genders in society, and once I heard that, I started to notice it so often in movies.
Troubling is the term that the original gender theorists in the 90s used, which is the root of all this, unfortunately, as in troubled water. But yeah, it's the same effect.
But see, I brought this up one time with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish.
Which I've not seen.
What's up?
I've not seen that.
Oh, okay. Well,
I just never got around to it.
everybody
But
seems
I
to
heard it
love
was good.
Everyone seems to love it, but one
Yeah.
of my big hangups was near the beginning. There's a scene where Puss in Boots is in like this tavern with all the peasants, and then like the king's guard come in to arrest him, and there's like 20 guardsmen or something, but like half of them are women and the other half are men.
Oh.
I actually asked people afterwards, tell me, what was the male to female ratio in those guards? And no one could tell me. They just remember a whole bunch of guards rushing in, and a bunch of them are women, a bunch of them are men. And
You just pay attention to those dog whistles better than most.
but here's the thing, because I also
Subconscious propaganda.
yeah, the blurring of the gender. So anyhow, so for me, once they got to gender fluid university, I completely turned on the movie. I started to hate it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have nothing good to say about this film when we do this review. But then, the movie started to win me over. Little things happened, funny jokes, Glinda's ditziness, the musical numbers, and so that's why this movie is such kind of like a minor miracle, because it got me to like it in spite of that whole
That
thing.
is very interesting. Well, though, the reason why it's gender fluid Hogwarts is because they kicked out all the animal professors and brought in the purple bitch, whatever her name is. You know what I mean, the sorceress.
I don't see what that has to do with. You're saying the sorceress made the school gender fluid?
Well, clearly she's implied to be the one in charge of the new order, collaborating with the new order. I can't remember her name off the top of my head.
The sorceress.
It was something.
They call her the
It was
sorceress.
something. It was something silly, because all the characters in the movie have silly names, because it's Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's my off the cuff take.
But with the gender fluid school, even though it was disgusting, I did start to rewrite the movie in my mind, because I'm like, okay, whatever, because the school students are all very antagonistic towards Alphaba, who essentially dresses like a Quaker. And I'm like, oh, the school is full of gender fluid bullies who bully the student who's all conservative. How interesting.
They all
that
bully
just
the
how it
goth
is?
girl. The conservative goth girl, yeah. The wife we all want.
Okay, so that's my big rant, and there's more other things I'll get to, but you go ahead. You tell me some more what you thought.
I think so. The thing I disliked the most about the film, actually, is that Elphaba's aversion to water is mentioned. Guess how many times it's mentioned? Maybe you noticed this, since you notice the gender fluid school. How many times was Elphaba's aversion to water mentioned? Because we all know at the end of Wizard of Oz,
yes.
1939,
Yep.
and in the book, she melts when a bucket of water is thrown on her head.
So I don't remember them ever addressing it in the movie.
They do, exactly once. When it's about to rain, and the sorceress says, "Oh, we must protect you from the rain." And she does the magic spell and makes the rainstorm go away. That's the
Interesting.
only time it comes up. What I want to know is, how does Elphaba, clean herself up? How does she bathe? She can't touch water. That's the most frustrating thing that they failed to mend in the book too, but
Well, okay.
especially on screen. It just doesn't make any sense narratively.
I would say for Wicked, it doesn't make any
With
sense.
a realistic tone. With a realistic tone of voice.
Pardon me. For Wicked, it doesn't make any sense because Elphaba is supposed to be the hero, or she's basically good. I would say for the original story, it's more okay because the Wicked Witch of the West is basically like a vampire almost. She's like her own monster.
Yes, very basic water symbolism there. I think it would make more sense if Elphaba acquired the trait of being vulnerable to water later on.
Yeah,
It really doesn't make sense for it to be like an inborn trait, like her being green. Her being born weird in the original sense of the word makes perfect sense given her origins. But yeah, the whole point of the story is that she didn't start out evil. And be aversion to water means that you're evil, as you were saying with vampires. That's the thing that I disliked, I think, the most about the story. As a movie, let's see. I don't know. There wasn't a whole lot I disliked about it as a movie. It was really well paced for being so long. Like, it was 3.5 hours. Normally, when I go to see a 3.5 hour movie, especially in a theater, I'm like dying to get out by
I'm pretty sure.
2 hours in at least.
Okay, wait. I'm pretty sure it was 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Really? I thought it was longer than that. Let me see.
Go ahead, look it up.
Yeah, Wicked 2024 runtime. Oh, you were right. Yeah, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is still quite long.
Yes.
I mean, that's like a little under the first Lord of the Rings movie, right?
Yes, it is
At
true.
least the theatrical.
I don't disagree. I did not feel the runtime while watching it.
Which is very, very impressive. That's a mark of some skill there.
Okay, I'm trying to think of more things I actually like before I get into more cynical things.
It's like I'm the opposite. I'm trying to think of things that I actively.
I mean, all I can say is the movie. For some reason, the prince. What was that one guy? The love interest guy.
Fiyero?
Was he a prince or something?
Yeah, he's supposed to be a prince from one of the Oz countries.
I just keep calling him the prince, and I keep in my mind thinking that he was played by Chris Pine, but he's not.
He may as well be.
He may as well be.
He's the Prince Charming archetype, who is more than meets the eye. Which is also a note in the movie's favor. Like, he starts out as all the characters start out as caricatures, and they gradually flesh out, which I like. I think that's a cool storytelling trope to use in a film.
Okay, I'm going to summarize more of the film for the audience watching. So basically, there's this talking animal rights issue where they have like a teacher who's a talking goat. I guess that kind of fits in with the old Oz story because you have like the Cowardly Lion. And I guess people don't like talking animals teaching classrooms. And then the talking animals are being cracked down on and put in cages so that they can't learn to talk. Political commentary. I don't know. And then I guess when Elphaba gets good enough at magic, she's going to go see the wizard so she can be an apprentice under the Wizard of Oz, right?
Save the aminals, yes.
Yes, very relevant subject matter, talking animal rights, I guess.
It's important to realize her whole motivation to go see the wizard by the time she goes is to address the animal situation. It starts out as like, oh, I'm gonna go see the wizard. Like in the not the first song, but one of the early songs when she first goes to the college, she's like singing about how I'm gonna go see the wizard. We're gonna work together. He's gonna make me not green. He's gonna make me normal. He's gonna reintegrate me into the world. It's gonna be great. Eventually, she kind of, she reaches the point where she's content with who she is, and then the exterior issue becomes the bigger, of more importance to her.
Yeah. So they
as she grows.
She and Glinda get on a train. They go to the city of Oz, where I noticed. The women all had dresses and the men all dressed like men. Yay.
Yes.
The city of Oz is not gender fluid.
The Emerald City.
The Emerald City, yeah.
Yes. It is very kind of fantasy Edwardian.
Yep.
I mean, given when the original book came out, that's obviously the inspiration.
Yep. So they go meet
very well done.
They go meet the wizard, who is played by Jeff Goldblum, who I thought did a very good restrained role.
Yes, also very well cast there. I agree. He was a little bit. I mean, when I see Jeff Goldblum, I think of like the stupid commercials he's in. It's a little hard to take him seriously. I thought he played it quite well.
I agree. I agree.
He's become kind of a caricature of himself, but it's fine because this movie is about characters who are basically caricatures.
Yeah, but I think it was a very restrained performance.
Yes.
Okay, so basically they get there, and it turns out that she brings up the talking animals rights issue cause, and the wizard's like, oh yes, we will address that.
Let me tell you about the roads.
And then he's like, hey, can you please read this book of magic for me? And I guess it turns out that Elphaba was being taught magic so that she could read this book of magic that the wizard and the sorceress could not, because Elphaba is like special. She's a virgin in the force or something.
Basically, yes.
And that's when she finds out that actually the wizard is behind the arresting of talking animals. And he says, well, where I come from, you gotta find someone to blame for your problems. And that's when she realizes that she has to let it go. And she and Glinda sing that great song, "Defying Gravity," which I've listened to a whole bunch of times since the movie was over.
I don't think I actually listened to the music recreationally after I saw the film. I will say that.
See,
But that may just be more because I'm busy lately
so that's
with
the funny
grad school
thing. Like,
stuff.
I think on principle, hate this movie more, but I love that that last song, "Defying Gravity." I've listened to
We're
it a
two people
lot.
puzzle here, I think, with this film. It's how
And
we fit. We got to fit our two views together to get a full view of the film. I think here.
okay, so then finally, Glinda and Alphaba sing the song, "You can still be with the wizard, I don't want it anymore, watch me defy gravity." And the whole thing with Alphaba escaping the Emerald City and flying away on the broom, I
Escaping the
thought
Matrix.
I thought it was all very epic and very emotional, and I really got into the spirit of it. Even though it was like very like rebellious in a way where I probably should not have liked it, but it worked for me.
We'll get into that. We'll get into
I
that.
felt the spirit of it flow through.
Yes.
And
yes.
I was
We'll
like,
do that.
I almost shed a tear. How embarrassing. Okay. Did you have any more thoughts on any of this at this time?
I mean, on the basic plot, not really. I have, when we get a little bit deeper, I have thoughts on what the movie means, which is pretty different from your appraisal, I assume. But
Okay.
in general, yeah, that's the plot. I mean, I would add that the wizard makes her read out of the grimoire, the Book of Magic, from ancient Oz, and she's tricked to read out of it in order to give the Oz's monkey guards wings because he wants to use them as surveillance drones, basically.
Right.
And so there's like this painful transformation sequence for all the monkeys grow feathers and wings,
Because he wants to
and
use
the
them
wizard
as.
he wants to use them as surveillance drones. And he comes right out and says it that that's the point, and then he goes to send them off after Elphaba. It's Class A betrayal.
See, there was a time when I was younger where I was into over analyzing things, and I would be saying the exact same thing. They're surveillance drones, but I'm like, I'm at
Well,
an age where I.
that's what he said there were. I'm not
He
speculating. That
basically
is what he said
says, he
they
says
were.
the words, "We need them to use as surveillance drones." Yeah, ha 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 ha.
I mean, he called them eyes in the sky. What else is that?
Something. I guess that's probably right. It's probably because of when the stage show was done.
Okay.
Wasn't the stage show supposed to be like a referendum against George W. Bush or something?
Probably. But ironically, I mean that continued under Obama too.
Yeah.
So nowadays it's a criticism of the Obama administration.
Well, it's a funny thing because I could tell the musical felt the story, the movie felt like didn't feel too modern. I mean, yes, it felt very modern, but the things like the romance and the bit you brought with the wizard being like, we need someone to blame, and I need my eyes in the sky. Like, these were all things they were shackled to because of it's in the stage musical.
Yeah,
So,
it is very, I mean, Bush and Obama era type political commentary. You were saying that it's like a Trump commentary, but I think you're right. Way more right there. It is more Bush and Obama, if anything.
yes, I'm sure the filmmakers had their own idea of what it was, but
Sure.
I was noticing, like, supposedly there's a lot of people on the political right and left who are seeing their values reflected in this movie.
And I'm not surprised.
It's a movie that includes everyone. It's political.
It really does.
Movie.
And when a movie actually pleases both sides of the political spectrum,
It must
you're
be
probably
good.
doing something right.
Yes.
And I think it is, although I'm not sure how intentional it is.
It's kind of like how back when I don't know. It seems like every time there's a presidential election, there's some movie that comes out, and then people are like, "In this divisive time, this is the most perfect movie for everyone to go see." Like
Yes.
that Mr. Rogers movie. It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood's like, in this divisive time, go see this movie. It'll make you feel better.
And I mean, the original Star Wars was definitely that movie.
So
Came
it's
out
like,
in the peak of, new wave cinema. I mean, we were mentioning dark and grungy before. I mean, that was the peak era for that. And
so right,
then Star Wars comes out and just blows everything out of the water.
but
And this is the start of a new era for cinema.
yes,
On the same note,
everybody go see Wicked. It will
it's
unite the country.
it's bright and colorful. Um, got music. It's got an actual love story, which I think we should dwell a little bit more on. There actually is
Yes, there's
a heterosexual
heterosexuality.
romance. There's a
There,
heterosexual romance that is complicated.
it was fun. It felt
It's a
like
normal love triangle.
it's funny because I was not in on the whole Twilight thing. Um, Most people I knew who read Twilight or liked the movies admitted that those were not good stories. They're like it's a guilty pleasure.
I have a few friends actually who liked the first book.
Sure, sure. There's degrees of Twilight fandom, but anyhow, like I was not a part of that,
Yeah,
and
me neither.
no judgment to people who are. I get why a love triangle story would be a lot of fun. This movie felt like Twilight for me. Like, oh, cute, they're both going for the same guy. Who will get him? And now
And
I
again,
want,
back to a female coded movie. That's a female coded fantasy.
yeah, and now I want to see this next movie. I want to see what happens with these characters.
Well, I can tell you from the book, it probably won't end well, but I don't know exactly how the musical changes that up. So maybe it's a better ending.
Yeah,
But the book is not a good ending.
well, it was I suspect the gender fluid university was there to offset the heterosexual romance.
Yeah, they gotta throw them a bone. The they them a bone, I'd
Yeah,
say.
so that's the thing. Like, if this movie was a totally original story, like the romance would not be there at all. But because they were shackled to this story written back in like what 2003, the stage show, they
Something like that.
had to have it in there.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good point. I mean, it's limited in how subversive it can be because of the original context.
Also, like Glinda was funny because she was like ditzy, and it was funny. Like like
Oh yeah, yeah.
they wouldn't make
She
a
was
female character ditzy today.
she was a living cartoon character, and it worked great.
That's what I wanted from the Super Mario Brothers movie.
I never saw that either.
I didn't see that, but once I saw
Apart
it,
from like half of it silently on a plane, watching it behind someone's back.
I saw once I saw the trailers for that, and I saw what they were doing with Princess Peach. I was so disappointed because I wanted to see ditzy Peach save me Mario from like the games, and I'm like, how dare you not do that? So
Yeah,
I felt like Glinda was Princess Peach for me. Like that's what I wanted.
interesting point. Yeah, that really does fit the bill.
Okay, so I had huge writing issues with with this movie though,
Huge writing issues, which
or
is interesting
character
because
writing.
I everything seemed to flow pretty well for me, at least given it's a movie. And I
Oh,
mean,
sure, the flow was
I
fine.
critique I critique movies differently from books and written works because I mean, movies are the realm of illusion. You're not supposed to not that not everything's supposed to be consistent. It's closer to the way we experience reality in that way.
So
I
can I?
think so. I tend to take writing a little less seriously in a movie, but I am interested in what you pulled out. So what do you got?
Okay, so
How
here's the
would you
thing.
have rewritten this movie to
There's
be the best it could be?
there's things that I object to in films because I think like, oh, that's bad for kids, or bad for
Given this
anyone.
is a PG movie, we should address that.
Okay, but aside like very obvious like explicit content in movies, there's other things that I think are rotting brains. One of them, this dawned on me a lot with this movie, and that is I don't know if this is like a new thing or a thing that's been happening for like the last 50 years, but one of my bigger pet peeves is just the lack of moral temptation. I'm noticing a lot of films there'll be some moment of temptation where like the evil demagogue will be like, join me and be my right man and we'll rule the world together. And then the hero or heroine will be like, what about my friends and family? And the demagogue will be like, well, sacrifices have to be made. And then the movie will emphasize like, oh, you could have had money and wealth, but you stood by your friends and family. But it's like, well, of course, I'm not going to kill my friends and family just to join you. It's like, once you have that, it's just, there's no incentive to do anything wrong. So movies always have this thing with like the fake temptation, the non-temptation, the thing where it's like it doesn't take a virtuous person to turn that down, to turn down the devil's offer when it's just so obviously evil. So that's just at the very end when it's like, oh, she's turns down the wizard. It's like, well, no crap, she's going to turn down the wizard because he's the one arresting all the talking animals.
See, I don't agree with that at all. It's really interesting.
You thought there was a serious temptation there?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, look, so Elphaba and this is getting a little bit into my overarching understanding of what the story's about. Elphaba is a marginal character from her birth. Illegitimate born. She's stands out. She doesn't fit in. Her whole life struggle is about, do I integrate with the moral center, which in this case, for just by definition, is the Wizard of Oz. He's the center of this world. Do I integrate with his world, or do I stay in the margin? And her tension with Galinda is totally all about this too, because Galinda obviously is a creature of the center. She's like the perfect type of person for Oz's world, who's just totally 100% malleable and moldable to whatever Oz wants because her priorities are social. She wants what's best for herself socially, even for other people socially, which is her relationship with Elphaba. So that's kind of her virtue, if it's a little bit of a disordered virtue. But so Elphaba's moral choice isn't just, do I join the evil wizard, or do I become a good guy and save the animals? The question is, do I stand by my friends? And I mean, Galinda's really her only friend, and her sister as well. She's abandoning her sister.
Oh.
She's abandoning Galinda. She's abandoning anyone who ever gave her a chance to do who knows.
Really?
And yeah, that is a very hard choice.
I would say the whole movie she seems to hate Glinda and she only does things for her out of pity, so I didn't think turning down Glinda was a big deal.
Okay, well, remember, hate and love are not very far. She hates Galinda because Galinda's everything she's not. She has everything she has everything except, she isn't good with the sorceress. And, I mean, the sacrifice she makes when she lets Galinda into the class by basically blackmailing her professor, I mean, that's some sacrifice right there. I think it's a little bit more complicated than you're painting it, frankly.
Well, here's one thing. Since I've listened to the final song so many times, Defying Gravity, the song makes it sound like, the song's all like, Elphaba, all you have to do is say you're sorry. You can still be with the wizard. And then Elphaba's like, but I don't want it anymore.
Yes, I mean, the song's about how she's...
I get the sense that in the stage show, there's a more obvious, temptation she had to resist. And that didn't match up with what I saw in the movie. To me, it's it's obvious. It's like, oh, you're just... To me, okay, you saw a temptation there, I did not. To me, it's like...
Oh, yeah, I think that's interesting.
Like, if somebody was going to give you, your dream job, and they said, all you have to do is betray your friends, you wouldn't do that. You're like, no.
But she's not betraying her friends. She's not getting her dream job, becoming an outcast for the rest of her life.
But she's not gonna like.
The alternative is the easy way, which reconciles her with her friends and with the world.
Yeah, but she's turning her back on all the talking animals and her goat friend, the professor.
So she's becoming a marginal figure permanently because the animals are marginal figures. I mean, they're her friends, but they're friends without any credentials. There's no advantage to being their friends. I know that sounds cruel to say, but that's the pattern of this story.
Okay, so here's how
it's her life is over if she joins with the animals because of what happened with Oz.
Yeah, but the
once
movie
Oz rejected her, that's the path.
We might know that, but the movie didn't show that. It didn't show the temptation moment where like she wants to be with the wizard. To me, it's like she just turns him down flat.
How would you have depicted that?
Okay, so
I thought it was pretty clear. But.
Here's my rewrite. Okay, how would it be? In the movie, Elphaba loves the talking animals, and Glinda is too ditzy and could not care less. In my version, Elphaba hates talking animals, and she hates the goat professor, and she's like, oh gosh, talking animals in this school. And Glinda is like, I love the talking animals, aren't they cute? And I totally support our professor being a goat. But for Glinda, it would just be like a retweet virtue thing on social media kind of thing. Like, see, I have the right politics. So then,
which is what it becomes when it becomes fashionable.
But here's the thing. Then, when they go to Emerald City to meet the Wizard of Oz, the wizard's like, oh yeah, I'm arresting all the talking animals. But you don't care about that, do you? But then that's when Elphaba has to have a moment of conscience, like, well, I don't like talking animals, but I don't want to see them put in cages and, arrested. And that's when it becomes like, well, these people or animals that I hate, I now actually have to do something hard and stick up for someone even if I hate them. And Glinda, who pretends to like the talking animals, is all like, oh, I don't care anymore, I just want fame and fortune and pretty things. And you see that Glinda, all her virtue signaling meant nothing. And then Elphaba has to make the hard choice of loving those who she previously hated.
That's a fascinating rewrite. I don't think it works, though. It's just that Elphaba, I think, given position in this past, align herself with the animals because they're the marginal figures in this world. And she's a marginal figure. Their kinship is inevitable. It's not really a choice, I don't think.
Audience, comment below on this broadcast and say who you think is right.
I'm afraid I'm Team Elphaba in this case. I think she has the righteous cause because the center is morally corrupt.
Oh,
that's sort of the point of the movie.
She's right, but there's no. Do you understand why I see no temptation though, and how you could have ramped up the temptation with better writing?
Maybe. I don't know. It seemed to work very intuitively for me at least.
Okay, well, let me move on to the other problem I have.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree. Okay, that's
sure.
Fine.
But here's the other problem. So Elphaba
you have an interesting perspective here.
Okay, other problem I have. Elphaba had this horrible childhood where her father blamed her for all these things, right? And she was bullied for having green skin, right?
Yeah.
So why doesn't that have any future effect on her? You would think she'd be very cynical and very jaded in her older life if her father was essentially that mean to her.
Okay, but that's also an extremely hateable character. I think they made the right call to, if not necessarily the most realistic call, to make her, she's developed a thick skin, she has a stoic understanding of her position, a stoic and realistic understanding of the way people treat her, and she's trying to stay above it all, but not totally succeeding.
Well,
I thought that was pretty realistic.
So
I wouldn't have wanted to see a cynical Elphaba.
Sure,
that would have been a disgusting movie.
Okay, have you ever heard of this? This is a character writing thing that I've heard about, and that is it falls into Mary Sue traits, and that is you have a character who has an epically tragic backstory,
Yes.
but it doesn't affect their psychology at all. They're still like a really good person. And the tragic backstory is just there just to give them like an edgy background, but it plays nothing into their adult life. Like, you would think it would make them like really distrustful of others, or maybe they would be, repeating the abuse that their parents gave them, like inflicting that on everyone else they come across. But they don't. It's just, oh yeah, they had this horrible childhood life. That's all. Isn't that cool? And if the movie wanted to be like, yeah, but you know what, Alphaba? Darn, she is such a wise and virtuous person that in spite of her parental abuse, she came out okay. But the movie didn't even address that. Alphaba is just like a generally virtuous, nice person.
I mean, it kind of did if you read between the lines. We have the bear maid. I'm not sure if she's given a name in the film. But I mean, the bear maid, besides, yeah, we'll just call her bear maid.
The bear nurse.
Sure. But besides, foreshadowing her association with the talking animals later on, it's also obviously a good nurturing presence in her younger life. There's also clearly a strong relationship with her sister that's demonstrated early on in the film and throughout. She does have, moral grounding. If she was an only child, I think that your kind of speculative description would probably be a lot more realistic. If she was an only child with no, moral grounding at all, with no good examples in her young life at all, then certainly. But I think her relative virtue, I don't think it's a perfect virtue at all, but at least it makes sense to me. She had some good examples growing up despite her situation, and she chose to emulate that rather than be bitter.
Sure, I mean, you see, and I think that's a thing where like someone, in spite of their horrible childhood, could totally aspire to virtue and say, hey, in spite of my awful childhood, I'm not going to let that make me miserable and unhappy.
There are Mary Sue elements too, of course, because she's a protagonist, if not written by a female coded. And that kind of just comes out when in a female fantasy, and often in a male fantasy too, in different ways.
Okay, but my point is, there are people who can have horrible childhoods and horrible parents and choose to not let that change, let that make them a good person. But this movie was not asking those questions or addressing that. It was just, oh, Alphaba, yeah, her childhood was horrible. And she's also the most virtuous person in this school. Okay.
I don't totally agree for the reasons I mentioned, but yeah, she certainly stands out compared to all the other kids with their pumped up kicks. I mean, all the other kids at Shiz University are clearly kind of... I mean, we mentioned how Galinda's a living cartoon. All the other students at Shiz are living cartoons. There's like the catty Asian guy. I don't know. What are some other Shiz character archetypes you can think of in the film? There's like Galinda's whole inner circle of the catty students, the popular kids.
For the record, audience, Shiz University, since we mentioned it a lot, and I know you're wondering, it's spelled Shizz.
Yes. Not the way you think. Get your mind out of the gutter.
Okay, I think we've covered everything, unless there's anything else you can think of that we haven't covered.
I mean, I haven't covered my grand theory about what the movie's about, but that's really all I think all I have left.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, you can maybe put it in simpler terms by saying that the funny thing that occurred to me after I left the theater is that the overarching plot is identical to Shrek. It's basically the same story, even down to imprisoning the talking animals. Although I think the talking animals are really a stand-in for all the enchanted aspects of Oz, like all the magic. The talking animals are a marginal thing because they're strange. They shouldn't exist, yet they do. They're a thing that can't really be understood, but they exist. And Oz has set himself totally against anything like this. He wants things to be under his control. He wants things to be managed. He's a managerial dictator, which is sort of a totalitarian role that transcends right and left. And back to our point, there are things that people on both sides of the political spectrum can see as good in this film. I think that's why. Oz is really the classic sort of managerial dictator who's trying to create an excess of order to bring everything under his control. And this is the same archetype that Lord Farquaad in Shrek embodies. He's doing it for the same reasons, too. And Elphaba, as a creature of the margin, as a character who comes out of an illicit relationship, she is from the outside. And it's her role to either integrate with the center, which is represented by Oz, and become part of that world and, submit to that world. Or she has to remain in the margin and destroy the center and replace it. That's, I think, the conflict of the movie. And it's sort of, in part, the conflict of our world right now. We have a moral center whose legitimacy is collapsing. Both, people don't trust the government, but people also don't trust traditional institutions either. Religious institutions, publishing institutions, medical institutions. We're in that situation, and this kind of story speaks to people on a subconscious level. We're hungry for that sort of story, to see a marginal figure take down the center. The problem is what to do after the center is destroyed and things go into chaos, which is where these sorts of modern stories don't usually have an answer. And I don't think the sequel is going to satisfactorily provide that answer. But I think it's trying to get there. We're slowly working our way there.
Yeah.
And Elphaba's a pretty good starting place.
Right, I don't disagree with any of that. The movie does seem to have a certain appeal where it's saying something about tyrannical government. Even if it's an odd metaphor for repressing the talking animals, I guess you could see it as, well, it's repressing free speech or something.
Well, it's literally repressing magic, which is what, systems of control do. They repress anything that can't be controlled. And that talking animals can't be controlled. They're animals. And yeah, speech can't be controlled. It's people's thoughts. So I think as, more conservative-leaning people, I think it's our inclination to side with Oz. That's sort of our natural inclination, is to side with the center. But it's very obvious that the center isn't in the right here. For one thing, Oz is a carny. He's from a carnival. He's from the world of illusion, and he's, building a world of illusion in Oz. He's a charlatan, literally. And that's not the kind of moral center you ever want to trust, simply put. And I think we can say the same for our modern situation, is most of our leaders are coming from a world of illusion, trying to cast illusions to spread systems of control. On both sides of the political aisle, but particularly on the left. I'd say that's the current prevailing vision of what the world should be. I think it's ironic that Oz kind of represents that. The leftward lean of that, more than the right.
Thank you so much for summing that up for the audience.
Hopefully that makes a little sense. That's what I've been mulling on since I saw the film.
I was still obsessed with the gender fluid LGBT boys at the university. I'm like, that's what this movie's really about. It's all about that. And how they all bully the girl who dresses like a Quaker.
It is ironic that, Elphaba as a marginal figure embodies so many conservative characteristics. But I think that's also, it's part of the upside down world here.
Yes, I think Elphaba was a symbol of how just because you had a horrible childhood, it doesn't mean you have to live it. She may have been underprivileged, but she still went off to university to get an education and make something of herself. Right?
There's something of that too, yeah. It's the inspiring story part of it is kind of dulled based on the fact that she was chosen because she was picked out of a crowd because she did magic. and
This-
the
this
wizard
whole movie-
ultimately wants to control magic to his own ends.
I think this whole movie was hijacked by secret right wingers in Hollywood. It's all a right wing coup.
I 100% believe that, actually. That's my conspiracy theory with this movie. But even more realistically, it's the pattern of, a double inversion. You have a story that tries to be, although the original Oz story was kind of subversive in different ways. You have the original story which tries to play it straight. Then you have an inverted version of the story, the Wicked the book, that tries to redefine everything. And then you have the musical, which almost tries to bring it back to the original book's, L. Frank Baum's book's vision and tone. And some funny things happen as a result of that. You can get from a double inversion some very, very conservative story tropes without realizing it. While you're trying to tell a very subversive story, Elphaba is both subversive and very, very conservative. She's trying to restore the original order of Oz before the wizard came. And the wizard is a progressive usurper, basically.
So
It's fascinating, really, to see this kind of movie come out in the current year.
audience,
Given, it seems so clear to me. Maybe it's not clear to...
I think we both gave our opinions, and you gave the biggest glowing endorsement of the movie between the two of us. And I still recommend seeing the movie. Just leave the kids at home.
Yeah. On the surface, obviously, I think we both are in good agreement. There are aspects of it that are cringe. The music is great. The casting is pretty great.
It's impossible to.
We can argue about the characters for sure.
It's hard
That's
to not
totally
have a good
open
time
field.
with this movie.
It is hard to not have a good time. It definitely captures the Broadway magic quite well.
Okay, let's wind it down now. Thank you, everyone, for being with us tonight, and hopefully you'll catch us again another time, maybe on another.
Thank
review.
you, Mr. Sake, for bringing me on.
My pleasure, Elias. Take care, everyone.
Have a great night.